I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything.
Hey everybody, it's time for another round of answers. I put out a call for questions regarding my atheism and you guys have responded really well, so I'm going to keep making these and let's get right into this next one. From Facebook, Dazz, he asks, why are you atheist and not agnostic? And this also follows up with Chris, who's also on Facebook, who says, can you succinctly describe the difference between believing in the non-existence of God and not believing in a God? And is this anti-theism versus atheism? And he also questions about agnosticism and wonders if he's describing the same thing or he's just dicing words here. So the difference of, well, why I am atheist versus agnostic, we have to go into what these words mean. And I can just talk about the kind of the classic definition and how I interpret them, but everyone interprets words differently, and that's part of the problem when it comes to these labels. But atheism is in general is the lack of belief in gods. Now that lack of belief can come from lack of knowledge. For example, a baby technically is an atheist because they don't even have any knowledge of a God. So they don't actually believe in a God. By definition, they would be atheists. Then there's the rejection of the belief in God. That means you have knowledge, you've had maybe even had a belief, and you have discarded that belief. So there's that part of atheism. And then there is the belief that there is no God. It's an active belief as opposed to a lack of belief. It's an active belief that there is no God. And these are very different things. And everyone may have different aspects of these. Versus agnosticism, which classically is the idea that the existence of a God is not knowable. Whether or not there is a God is just something that we cannot know. That's the classic view. Then there's the more modern take on it, which is more personal, which is I don't know. That whether or not there is a God, I do not have the knowledge to answer that question. So when you ask whether or not why I'm an atheist as opposed to agnostic, all these come into play. I personally am not of the mind that these things are contradictory. They deal with different aspects of an individual. Atheism is about belief or lack of belief, while agnosticism is about knowledge. And so these things are separate things. We are perfectly capable of believing something without actually having all the knowledge. And if we are honest with ourselves, we can distinguish the two things. I may believe that a particular law or a particular politician is best for a situation, but at the same time, I have to be able to acknowledge that I don't know every aspect of the situation, and I don't know what all the possible consequences are. So my knowledge is limited, but I still have a particular belief based on what I know. And there are two very different things. And we have to be honest with ourselves about these things. So I try to pride myself on my honesty. Now, I may not be honest to other people, but I am honest with myself. I am honest about my own feelings and my own intentions. If you lie to yourself, you're going down a really bad road. So my position when it comes to agnosticism versus atheism depends on how the person I'm talking to defines God. The definition of a God kind of puts my position in a particular category. For example, let's take the biblical God. Now, the biblical God, I think, is a knowable concept. So I'm not agnostic in the pure sense about it, because I believe the biblical God, which is one who is active, who was there at the beginning of the universe, crafting things by hand, crafting people and beings by hand, crafting the universe, putting them into motion, interfering on a regular basis with human affairs, responding to prayers, causing things to happen, saving people and miracles and things like that. This type of God, this concept of God, is very knowable. But since there is no sign of it and there is no evidence of it, I'm not classically agnostic about it. I'm just atheist about it. I believe the biblical God is false. I do not believe in that God because I believe it is knowable and not shown, not proven, and in many cases disproven. So I'm a very hard atheist when it comes to this type of hands-on God. Then you have the less knowable type of God. You know, the prime mover, the blind watchmaker type of vague God that got things started and then kind of just stepped back and hasn't interfered with anything. That concept of God is not knowable to me. I don't see that being something that we can know. It's too vague, it's too uncertain, and since there's no markers of that we can think of for such a God, it's not knowable. I'm more of a pure agnostic when it comes to that type of God. I still am atheistic about it because I don't believe in it, but I don't believe in it because I don't think it's even knowable. And since it's not knowable, why would I believe in it? So I have both views when it comes to that. Then there's the really broad concept of a God, which is the laws of physics and all the dynamics of the universe, all the people, planets, forces in the universe are God. They collectively are God in their aspect. And that just doesn't even fit a definition of a God to me. There's no agency involved there. There's no activity or intent involved there. And so for me, it doesn't even fit the definition of a God, and honestly isn't even worth my time. Then there's the anti-theism aspect of things. Now, for me, anti-theism means you're against the belief in gods. Now, as much as I am against the belief in gods, personally, and I guess you could say I'm against the belief in gods for other people, but that's mostly because I don't really think people should be believing in things that there's no proof of. But the fact is, I got to give some leeway. We believe a lot of stuff that we don't have all the evidence for. Back to politics, we believe we uphold a politician as an aspect of something we think will work, or a law, or a general service that we think is positive. But the fact is, we don't know everything about it, do we? And we can't, because we're limited. But we still have a certain amount of belief in it. So I got to give believers a certain amount of slack. But I am a hard anti-theist when it comes to interfering in the laws of the land, in the personal lives of other people. I think theism should be personal and private and contained to the individual. But I'm not a pure anti-theist in that sense. But the fact is, I know, and we all know, people in society that need their theism. I have people in my family that I'm glad they have their theism. It is something that gives them a grounding, that gives them guide rails, it gives them a sense of solid bedrock under their feet for them to go on in their daily lives. Some people need it. We all know that there are some people who in our society that don't have a proper moral compass without religion or theism. I don't believe it's necessary, but we know there are people who need it. And so I can't be purely anti-theist without putting those people out in the cold with nothing. And so I think it is necessary. Some people have that need for a crutch, for a lack of a better term. I know it seems like an insult, and I guess it is in many ways, but the fact is, crutches have their purpose. Crutches are helpful. If someone has a broken leg, we give them crutches so that they can continue with their lives and move forward, and they can get stronger till they get self-sufficient again, and that they can walk on their own. But I am of the personal belief that if you have the strength, and you can stand on your own, and you can walk on your own, it's time to put the crutches away. That's it for those. I want to thank everybody for their great contributions. We're getting some great questions here. I'm still going to be taking these questions and making more videos, so feel free to go back to my original call for questions video, or here in this comment thread, put another question, talk amongst yourselves. I'm not going to be responding to questions here unless it's more of in a policing the situation type of manner. I want this to be an open forum, so please, talk amongst yourselves, but be civil. Try to be open in conversation. Don't just troll. Really, let's try to keep this a great forum. Thank you very much. Talk to you again soon.
That's my job. That's what I do. I don't lose. I win. I win. Is there no one on this planet to even challenge me?
by and congratulate me on last night's victory.